We are now going to be talking all things Arsenal, Harry's beloved team. You're probably one of the luckiest people on the planet that you work in this industry where you get to commentate on football and get to go to football games, and you also at times, very often, get to do it on your beloved club, which is pretty cool, right?
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. I'm so lucky to get to work on my own club, because then it doesn't feel like work, does it? You'd be at the game anyway.
Yeah.
You'd do all the research anyway. You do all the prep anyway, so yeah, it's amazing. And,
so 8 games into the season, 6 wins from 8, level on points with Tottenham, 20 points. They're above you though on goals scored. You're still unbeaten in the league. You did secure qualification in the Carabao Cup, and it's 4 points from 2 games in the Champions League. From last season, 3 points, isn't it? Sorry. From last season, missing out on the league title to City and the brilliant run they went on and your not so great run, do you think you got what you needed in the summer? Do you think this now is the squad that can top potentially the best team we've seen in Premier League history?
I think, going into the season, I was really optimistic about the summer business. You know, I liked the idea of getting Jurriën Timber in, who could cover in a multitude of defensive positions. The idea of signing Declan Rice was exciting, and thankfully Arsenal were able to get that over the line. Kai Havertz was the one I think that there were question marks about, and probably still are, if we're being honest, at this moment in time. So I think Arsenal did what they needed to do in the transfer market, but I think more importantly than anybody that they signed, it's about the learns from last season. It's about the experience. It's about having been there now and having understood where they fell short and what they need to do differently going forward. So I think that's the key. I think that's why I feel like Arsenal are equipped to give it another go, because of partly what they've done in terms of transfers, partly because of the development of the players that they already had at the club to going on to the next level, but also because of the learns and the experience that came with what ultimately ended in heartbreak last season.
Yeah, there was 2 big money signings coming in the summer. I mean, the 2 most high-profile ones, of course, Declan Rice and Kai Havertz. We are going to speak in a lot more detail about Kai Havertz later. But have you been slightly underwhelmed by Kai Havertz and with Declan Rice? Is he sort of everything and more that you wanted and hoped that he would be at Arsenal? Yeah,
I'll start with Kai Havertz. He has been a little bit underwhelming. I'd be lying if I said he wasn't. You know, I think I'm willing to give him more time. I think most Arsenal fans are as well. I think a lot of Arsenal fans recognise that he's been playing in midfield a lot, and that might not be the right position for him. And I think people have looked at, maybe him coming on in games as a centre forward and having an impact, and are starting to think that maybe Mikel Arteta needs to rethink the way he utilises him. And if he does use him in a slightly different way, we might get more out of him. As for Declan Rice, he's been everything you hoped for and more, as you say. There have been games where he's been incredible this season. I think there have been games, particularly at the start of the campaign, where you could see that he was just feeling his way into a new team. But as every week goes by, you feel like he's becoming more and more important, more and more pivotal. And I really can't wait to see him have a run of games in the same team as Thomas Partey, because I think Partey's presence would take the shackles off of Declan Rice a little bit. He's had to play a lot of games with Odegaard and Havertz with him in midfield, or Odegaard and Vieira. And those players, they're hard working and they'll press aggressively from the front. But do they have that defensive awareness? Are they going to drop into the pockets? No. And that adds responsibility to Declan Rice. So I'm excited to see how he's going to kick on further, because I really believe that's what's going to happen with Thomas Partey in the midfield alongside him.
And that's quite a scary prospect, isn't it, for the rest of the Premier League? You're saying Declan Rice is only going to get better and better. Do you think, again, this season it'll be similar to last season in the sense of it is going to be Arsenal, Man City going for the title as we approach the final couple of months? Or when you look at some of the other challengers, Liverpool have started really well, strengthened well in the summer, and of course it is currently Tottenham that sits top of the Premier League. Are there other challenges this year, or are you expecting a similar race to last season?
I think that it's going to be a 3-horse race this season. I think that Liverpool are well equipped to give it a go. I still have question marks over them defensively, and I think a lot of people do. But I think come January, they'll probably do more business, Liverpool. So I think they'll be okay, and I think they'll definitely be in the race. I think it's going to be a 3-horse race, which is going to be really, really interesting. As for Spurs, not for me. It's premature talk.
It is very premature, isn't it?
Yeah, and with Tottenham Hotspur as well. This is a club that, a few months ago were in crisis, supposedly. This is a club that started last season just as impressively going into last weekend as they had in the year prior, and nobody got excited about him then. Well, people maybe did, but generally I think everybody knew that, this wasn't going to last. And I think there's too much of this loving around Ange Postecoglou. I've got to be honest. He's done a great job, and he seems like a really nice guy.
Too much, too overhyped?
Yeah, way too overhyped. And it's because people like him. And I understand that if you're a manager and you can come across as likeable, you buy yourself more time. But for me, it's too much. There's comments that he makes that come across, I think, sometimes as a little bit sarcastic. And sometimes I think to myself, what would happen if Jurgen Klopp said that?
Can you give me an example? Can you think of one on top of your head? Because I've been in a lot of his press conferences.
There was the example of the fantasy football. Somebody asked him about fantasy football.
George Cummins used to work here.
And he said, you can do what you like, mate, or something along those lines.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, if Jurgen Klopp said that, he'd be labelled as rude.
I think you're being so harsh here. I mean, come on, I'm not having it. He is friendly, he's likeable, he's charismatic. He didn't mean that in a rude way in any way, shape or form.
But I'm not saying he means it in a rude way. I'm saying that if someone else said it, it would be perceived as to have been said in a rude way.
If Pep said that to a journalist, people would have gone, Pep's in a bad mood again.
Even after the Luton game, Sam Matterface said to him, you must have felt after the red card like it was going to be one of those days. And he turned around and said, what kind of days are those, mate? And I thought to myself, why don't you just answer the question?
Yeah, sure.
But because it's Ange Postecoglou, it's fine, and everybody loves him, and everybody thinks it's great.
So do you think some of the stuff that he said, and the way some of the stuff that he does say gets portrayed on social media, you think it's all been a little bit too much? You think because he's, I don't know, is it the fact that he's Australian? It's a new country, it's a new culture, it's a different background. Why do you think that people have taken his comments in? Because it just seems as if after every press conference, all you got to do is go on Twitter, and everybody's going, "Oh, isn't he great? Yeah. Isn't he funny?"
Yeah, and it's because he's winning games as well.
Yeah.
Like the minute he loses 2 or 3 games, that narrative is going to shift completely the other way.
And you're excited for that, aren't you?
And all of a sudden, Ange Postecoglou will be saying the same things in the same tone, and people will be saying, he's been prickly today and he's agitated.
Okay, very interesting.
It's going to turn.
Very interesting, because I haven't heard that take before. It's all just been, has been an Ange Postecoglou loving, hasn't it? Do you think in any way, shape or form, but the style of play, have you been impressed with the style of play that he's trying to implement? Because they went to your patch, didn't they? And I thought they did really, really well.
Yeah, I have been impressed with the football. You can't take away from that. I think that the hype around him as a manager is a bit too much, and some of the things he says are being blown up to be these genius lines when they're really not. But in terms of on the pitch, you can't knock him. I think he's done a really good job. And I think in the last couple of weeks, what I've seen from them or the last few weeks, they've shown a different side to themselves. So at Arsenal, I think they showed some steel as well as being able to play good football. If you look at them against Luton last weekend, where the first half went brilliantly, but they hadn't managed to find a goal, Bissouma got sent off, etc., etc. They got themselves into a position where players were tiring up top and they needed to dig in, and he made a couple of changes, and I thought I got to see a different side of Tottenham. So on the pitch, he deserves all the praise in the world, but just it's the other side that's getting under my skin a little bit.
Is it really? It's annoying you?
Yeah, because I just think if it was someone else, you wouldn't report on it in the same way.
Very interesting. Very, very interesting stuff.
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.